My Lords, I rise with some trepidation because schools and education are not my areas, and when I hear the Noble Baroness Lady Morris and Lords Soley and Knight saying something and I don't quite agree, then I do pause, I have to say. Anyway, I congratulate the Noble Lord Soley on getting something close to his original bill through. I hope I have the same success with my Clean Air Bill, which will be coming up in July. And it is good to see such a sort of broad coalition of peers, noble peers, actually with concerns about this part of the bill, about the so-called Children Not in School Register, and bringing so many amendments to this part of the bill. Now, I disagree slightly with the Noble Lord Soley. He talked about the three groups, and I think, actually, probably I don't disagree with him, but I think part of the problem is the government is trying to sort of fix all three of those groups with one piece of legislation. I think that's the problem, that they are extremely different. And what we should be trying to do is finding out children who are receiving no education or a dangerously poor education. But the net is cast far too wide, and it risks trapping many home-educating families within a web of unnecessary bureaucracy and red tape. I'm only standing up to speak on this because some of my immediate family, some of my grandchildren were home-educated, and it has served them extremely well. And so I feel that I do have a voice in this. Now, a great many families are very worried about this prospect within the bill, and I'm sure have contacted many noble lords about their concerns. Some concerns are fairly simple, like the time limits being too short and the registration requirements being unclear. But others are much deeper, such as the breadth of discretion granted to local authorities to decide whether a child is receiving an adequate home education or should be subjected to a school attendance order. Now, if the intention of the government is to extend the grasp of the state into the lives of home-educating families, then they should be explicit about it. But so far, the government justifies this policy as being about helping children who aren't receiving any education. If that really is the policy intent, there must be a better way of legislating for it than this bureaucratic mess. And I'm sorry, I should have thanked the Noble Lady, the Minister, for meeting with me and two concerned people. And I look forward to, I haven't seen any letters in return, but I'm sure they're winging their way. Now, for me, it doesn't make sense to foist these powers and duties onto local authorities when the rest of the government's education policy is so focused on removing powers and duties from local authorities. And far from perhaps giving them more time to do this work, in fact, I think it might mean that they lose their skills because they aren't involved anymore. Schools are becoming academies to supposedly free them from the bureaucracy of local authority control. But then homeschooling families are having their freedom constrained by bringing them into local authority control. It really doesn't add up. And so I would like to hear from the Noble Lady, the Minister, on how this does somehow make itself into some sort of coherence. And the finances won't add up either. Overstretched local authorities are being lumbered with new duties but no new funding. They already struggle to provide their statutory special education and disability functions, and adding a whole new layer of registering, investigating and prosecuting home educating families will, I think, give a lot of opportunities for grievance and mistakes. So all of these factors feed into my Amendment 172, which would require the government to review its home education policy and consider what less intrusive measures would achieve it. This legislation is clearly the wrong way, and I don't really understand why the government is trying to bring in these measures when it hasn't done its homework.